Hello and welcome to this new episode of Bootstrapping Your Dreams Show. I'm your host Manuj Aggarwal, and today I have a very special guest, my friend Craig Handley. So Craig is the CEO and founder of the hugely successful Listen Up Aspinall, which was named number one in business products and service and number 27 overall on the Inc. magazine's 500 list. An expert in Hispanic marketing, direct response marketing, sales, and brand expansion. Craig is the best-selling author of Hire to Quit. His business employ over 1,000 employees and have cumulatively done over $500 million in sales within the last 5 years to Hispanics in the USA. Craig served 5 years in the US Army Infantry during the first Iraqi war. He's an accomplished musician and stand-up comedian, and he's really good at it. So if you haven't checked out his funny songs, I highly recommend it. It's not suitable for this podcast, but do check it out. He has composed hundreds of songs from rap to pop to ballads to humorous parodies and has hosted the Adult Entertainment Awards. Craig is the 85th civilian ever to jump out of a plane from over 32,000 feet. I didn't know about Craig. He believed that with faith and a little courage, everything is possible. I completely believe that. Welcome, Craig.
How you doing?
Good, good. All right. So you have a very interesting background. So why don't we, get to know you a little bit? Tell us a little bit about your history. How did you get into the army, and how did you start this massively successful company?
Well, it's a loaded question. You know, it's funny. When I was a kid, I had a paper route, and I think that you learn a lot in having a job early on. And I used to deliver papers, and they had a contest as to, whoever sold the most new subscribers won a trip to Florida. Mm-hmm. And I went door to door, door to door to door, and, try telling a kid selling newspapers for a trip to Florida that you're not going to take the paper.
Yeah.
Pretty hard to do, right? And I happened to do really well at that. And I was also, as a kid, bullied a lot. And that was one area of my life where I was a winner, and it feels good to be a winner. Yeah. And so, of course, getting that dopamine, for being good. I think that's kind of that early success combined with some of the negative stuff that happened to me as a kid is what drove a lot of my success. It really made me understand the joy of doing something well and winning. And so going from being a paper boy, even when I was in high school, I kept the Sunday paper out. And I used to go personally, say hello to my customers. I learned shock and awe. I used to be really kind, and every once in a while I'd bring little gifts and trinkets and remember everything about them. And on Christmas, my Sunday paper route around Christmas time, I used to make $500, $600 in tips on just before Christmas as a high school kid, just because I always treated my customers right. And I ended up winning 2 contests where they were sending you away on trips as a paper boy. I always worked hard. When I was in college, I believe in hacking employment. I don't believe in taking a job. Yeah. I worked a night audit shift at a hotel. It was an hour's worth of math, and then I could sleep behind the desk, and they'd ring the bell. And so I got paid for 8 hours while I was sleeping. I used to referee basketball, umpire baseball, and referee soccer. Every game paid a flat rate of $60 to $100 in my day, which is years ago. I used to DJ at a nightclub, and I did weddings on the weekend for $1,000. Wow. I mean, I had 6 jobs, and I ran a pizza place.
Wow.
I had 6 jobs in college while I was trying to help pay for my college. So I've always been a hard worker. I always dreamed of being in music. Mm-hmm. And I happen to be really good at sales. Nice. So that's going back a ways, but you asked. So for sure. I started selling door to door, selling insurance for 3 years, was really good at it. Mm-hmm. Wanted to do something bigger. While I was looking for bigger, I ended up in a call center. Wow. And I became the best out of over 1,000 people in a call center. Wow. And I started training other people. I started getting hired to help other people build call centers, around where I lived. And then I made it an international thing, and I became one of the top copywriters in writing phone scripts for phone agents. And providing sales training, which was very similar to what I used to get trained on when I went door to door, trained others on, going door to door selling insurance. Yeah. So I became an expert at the training process of sales, decided to open my own call center, and all those things combined, we went from 20 seats to 550 seats in under a year. It was like a rocket. And zero to billing over 15 million in revenue, 7,000% growth year over year. It was definitely an interesting time. It felt great, and we've been running strong for about 14 years. So,
that's amazing.
So there's the story, the background, all the history.
Great. And I want to quickly touch upon your time in the Army as well, because Army always shapes you. They say they break you down and they build you up back again. So how was your time in the Army and the war?
Good question. It's funny. I got accepted to Berklee College of Music, most prestigious music school in the country. At the time, I believe it was $29,000 a year.
Uh-huh.
And I wanted to go, but I didn't have any money.
I see.
So it's not that I wanted to join the Army. It's that I wasn't afraid of anything.
Uh-huh.
And so the Army said they'd help me pay for college. And I was focused on music, right? I'm going to get into Berklee, and go to Berklee. And so I went in the Army. Infantry paid the most, so I had no problem sleeping in the dirt, digging my own, they say as an infantryman in the Army, you dig your own grave. You dig a hole to sleep in, and then you start firing out of it. And some people don't get out. I was really proud to serve my country. I really had a great experience going through boot camp. I'm a pretty big guy, so nobody really gave me too much crap. I mean, when I was 21 years old, I was built really well, and I was one of the strongest guys going through. So the drill sergeants didn't have to, give me as much of a hard time as others. So I ended up having a really good experience going through, and love the brotherhood that you build up. Infantry had no women at the time, so you build a lot of really good relationships with other men. And I think that's important in your life to have those types of bonds. So, and it does give you that discipline. But for me, it was a sole focus of how do I get to music school, and I ended up going to 2 music schools, just not Berklee. They were cheaper. And then I dropped out because I didn't want to be a school teacher, and I didn't think they were teaching me how to be a rock star.
I see. Well, let's talk about music, because that is another interesting aspect of your life. Even after such a successful business career, your true passion is music. So how did you get into that? Like, was it something you were drawn to naturally, or you developed the taste like over time?
What happened with music is that I don't know. I never thought I joined chorus because I needed the credit, right? In high school, you have to have a credit. And then I realized I liked to sing.
Okay.
And I started to learn how to play the piano, and I wrote some songs. And I guess you kind of realize that that's your gift, right? I mean, I realized that being creative and being able to write my emotions out on paper, that was my God-given gift. And I can write about anything. And so how did I fall into it? How do you fall into anything? I mean, I just fell in love with it. Maybe it was because chicks found it cute that I could sing and play the piano. Maybe it was all motivated by women, but who cares? I love it. Music is what makes me happy. I can come up with a song about any topic, anytime, any place, almost instantaneously. And so I guess that's just where my soul felt a calling. Out of everything I've done, that was kind of where I felt the most at home.
That's great. And there's so much to unpack here, so I'll keep going. And there's another talent that you have, which is comedy. So how did you get into that?
Well, I wanted to be a better speaker, and I've always thought that I was kind of funny. Mm-hmm. And a friend of mine was running a program on using comedy as a way to improve your speaking skills, when you're on stage. And I do coaching and I do speaking, and I'm like, I've always wanted to do comedy. So we ended up writing out my comedy set, and I wrote 5 original songs and, wrote my 20 minutes of stand-up. Ended up with I almost had an hour-long set until he said, look, you're not going to get an hour your first time out. Yeah. So that's a lot to memorize. It's a lot of pressure. And punchlines, you can't forget a punchline, because then the whole joke's gone. So it's really, it's much more difficult than anything else I've ever done. because the timing is so important. And the hecklers, you got to be prepared for this and that. And you got to be, if you forget a line, how do you recover?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the show must go on. So it was a good time. It was a little bit stressful doing it, and I'm glad I did it. And I guess I was fairly successful at it. I think I am kind of funny. So
you're definitely
write 20 songs. I don't know. I don't know. I'll do it again. I don't know where it will fit into my future. I mean, I'm putting together a show with other entrepreneurs, and it's going to be called like the Entrepreneurs Comedy Show, and it'll be a 2-hour show, and I'm bringing in some of the funniest entrepreneurs. I'm going to film it and shoot it here at my office or at a stage here in Mexico, and maybe try to sell it to Netflix or Amazon.
Nice. All right, great. Well, now let's talk about how do you develop all these talents and be successful at that? Because we are living in strange times right now. A lot of people are going through some negative experiences. They're feeling down, and what can you share from your life history, what you have learned, because you have had success in so many different areas? How do you pick yourself up and sort of go learn something new and be successful at that?
I don't know. I think I'm never afraid to learn from others, right? I'm humble enough to know what I don't know. And I'm confident enough to know that I can pick it up just by having a conversation. And I think it's true in any industry. So let me give you an example. I decided that I was going to sell my business, and we haven't sold it yet, and maybe we will, maybe we won't at this point because it's growing and doing really well. So there's no pressure there. But I decided I wasn't going to be in the operations anymore, and I was going to focus on music. In order to get into music, I could spend 40 years from the bottom, or I wanted to get in at the top. And I think every business that you look at, there's a way to hack into the business. Just like hacking your health. My friend Dave Asprey from bulletproof.com talks a lot about, hacking your health and living till you're 180 years old. And he does a lot of things to hack health. And I've tried some of his stuff, and it's amazing, right? You can stay younger longer, alive, enjoying your life longer with some of the stuff he does. So for me in the music business, I hired writers who are Grammy Award-winning writers to help me with my songs. Now, the reality is my songs could have been great, but I don't have the connections that they have. So I paid someone who's really good to work on some of my songs. And we did 4 songs together so far. We're working on a 5th. And the 4 that we did together, 2 of them are 70 to 80% of my writing, and she gets 20% of the credits. And I was okay giving that up. 2 of the songs, I'm only at 35 or 40%, and she actually rewrote a lot more. But the reality is that she had the connections with the 12 different producers that now have these records. And the producers that she works with have worked with Justin Bieber and Ariana Grande and John Legend and so on and so on and so on and so on. And so now, because they're looking at my records, those artists and those producers want to talk to me. So I literally skipped the 40 years that it takes to build these relationships and jumped right into a mentoring session with someone who does it and said, these are my songs, let's work on them together. And, and kind of just, I've kind of forced my way. I don't want to say forced, but I got the talent. I just didn't have the connection. So I think all these things I've learned is about networking. It's about asking questions and making the right connections, not being afraid to maybe pay a little bit for a mentor. I could have written with a bunch of artists that are good but don't have Grammy Awards and other awards, but I don't think that would have gotten me where I wanted to go. I happened to have the money, to be able to pay her. It wasn't much, it was $300 to $500, to work with some of these guys because they're better than me. And so I thought it was fair, and it was my suggestion. The reality is, if you're a young writer and you reach out to some of these budding writers, they may work with you if you've got some good music and take you under their wing. But I think you should find ways there's a value in somebody being in the business for 40 years. So it's the same thing with anything I do. I always look to partner or talk to people smarter than me, learn whatever I can from them as a sponge, and find ways to circumvent the normal, or not circumvent, but to jump some of the necessary steps that a lot of people might take.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's strategy, right? Like, so you're really good at strategizing.
Maybe. I think that's part of it. I mean, look, this whole COVID thing for me, all these writers and all these artists aren't doing live concerts, but they all have Instagram.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know the most famous writers in the world. Well, the writers, if you want to talk to Justin Bieber, you got to fight through 45,000 people on his Instagram Live.
Yeah.
But if you want to talk to Justin Bieber, why wouldn't you talk to Justin Gray?
Yeah.
And Justin Gray has produced many records for Justin Bieber.
Mm-hmm.
And Justin Gray, to get to him, if you send him a Facebook message, he'll reply.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so, you know, there's people like that. There's the guy Marty James, who was a writer on Despacito. Mm-hmm. Nicest guy in the world. He answered my Instagram message, and now we're friends.
Awesome.
You know what I mean? So there's all these writers that have written for these amazing records for these guys, and they don't have 45, or they don't have 4.5 million fans, or whatever you're trying to. You want to fight through the noise, find out who knows them and who works with them, and then connect with them. And they'll say, hey, you know what? One of my good friends is Justin Bieber. I think this record's great. Let me get it to him.
Awesome.
So I think some people don't know how to strategize, and and it sounds impossible. It's not impossible. It's hard work, and you've got to know how to find ways to connect the dots and how to give value. You can't just call somebody and say, hey, listen to my record.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, I mean, I talk about my life and the things I've done in my life, and how I would love to find a marketing project to give to them, and maybe they could give me some pointers on music.
Yeah. And one thing I really appreciate about you is, even after being so immensely successful, you are actually very down to earth. You know, I even connected with you on Instagram, and I got a reply very quickly. So that humility also plays a huge part, because a lot of people get wrapped up in their ego, and that sort of prevents them from getting to wherever they can get, right?
Yeah, it's funny. And I'll tell you the truth. When I made my first 100,000, I probably was a more egocentric person than I am today. Mm-hmm. You know, I went out and bought the Rolex, put it on my wrist. I went out and bought the $150 pair of shoes and the nice belt, because somebody told me people could tell how successful you are by your watch, your belt, and your shoes. Yeah. And I bought all that crap. Mm-hmm. You know, so I'm like, oh, well, I better get nice shoes, a nice belt, and a nice watch.
Yeah, that's great.
You know, the more successful you are, the more you give back to others, and the more humble you are. So I can probably tell somebody's worth just based on how giving they are, you know. And the people that aren't giving, those are the ones that are making $150 a year, and they think they're the bomb. You know, those are the people that make me laugh.
That's for sure. Now let's turn towards business and your sales skills. You're a legendary salesperson or salesman, and you just have a way to convince people. So how do you become so good at sales? That's something that I have struggled with in my entire life. So let's do a live sort of coaching session and learn from you. How do you get so good at sales?
I think the first thing is you got to learn how to personalize and disarm with somebody. So the first thing you want to do is avoid talking about business. I like to learn about people, about what they do, about what their passions are. You know, I like to talk about things outside of business. I mean, you and I have related more on my comedy and my music than we have about business in any level, and here we are doing business. Yeah. You know, so I think getting to know people without looking like you want something from them is very important. That's how you build rapport. If you just ask somebody for something, that's like, this is maybe a bad analogy, but you know, I saw kids in college who would walk up to girl after girl after girl saying, "Want to go home with me?" And there's 1 out of 50 that will probably say yes. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that if you actually spend time talking to somebody and communicating, that maybe it's 1 out of 4 or whatever when you actually spend time building rapport. And so I usually build rapport with people. I find out what they're passionate about. And what that does is it helps me understand what their needs are, what their biggest pain points are. And then I usually try to offer solutions for them. It's called benefits. There's such a thing as called feature, function, and primary benefits. and understanding what the benefits are for someone to know you and want to work with you makes you an interesting person. So I usually will say, back to the music business. One of the guys I met has a platform, Midio.com, MDIO.com, and he was looking for some investment opportunity along with some creative ideas to make it better. Well, I introduced him to some of my friends who are interested in both music and business and would potentially make an investment. And I also offered strategic advice on maybe how to grow the platform and how to make it more perceptible. I offered advice to him on bringing in more members, which is through a LinkedIn reach out strategy, that you're very familiar with. And Manuj and I actually have been developing that together in some regard. I mean, he kind of did 90% of the work, and now I'm throwing in my 10% of good ideas. And so I gave him a lot of value because I found out what his pain points were. And then I said, by the way, I've written a lot of music. Would you mind listening to a few? I didn't even ask him to listen. We didn't talk about music. And that's my number one goal, was to talk about music. But I didn't do any of that until we talked about his problems and his pain points. And I gave him some ways to solve those pain points. And then when I asked him to listen to a song, he goes, absolutely. And then he referred me to a writer who's referred me to other writers. And so sales is one of those things where, and I teach my phone reps who answer thousands and thousands of calls, personalize and disarm, find the needs, feature function, primary benefits, close, rebut, close again, but in no way are you ever to make somebody feel like there's pressure, to do something they don't want to do. It should be their decision. If you haven't done a good job of providing information for them to make a decision to want to work with you, then you haven't done a good job selling. You should be pulling up. You should be pulling, not pushing.
That's great.
So that's my process, and I've another story on my bucket list is I wanted to meet all the living Beatles.
Okay.
And in my head that was Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr. But apparently, in the universe's mind, that was George Harrison's wife and Yoko Ono too, and Paul McCartney's son. Come to think of it, and so I did a project for the David Lynch Foundation. He had created a documentary called The Invisible Group. I took the 70 hours of footage that he left on the floor, and I turned it into a 30-minute infomercial.
Wow! And
I had Father Mejia come into Mexico, and apparently the work that we did created quite a donation to Father Mejia's charity, over $10 million from what I understand. And so David Lynch called me one day and said, you're an extremely important friend to the David Lynch Foundation. I really appreciate everything you've done. And I wanted to let you know that I'm throwing a Peace and Love event for Ringo Starr's birthday. And it's a very exclusive list, about 100 people. And I'd love to invite you as my guest. So I sat in the front row next to Jim Carrey while a bunch of Ringo's friends came up and sang Beatles songs, including one of my idols, Ben Folds, who I talked to for over an hour. Stephen Luca for Toto was playing backup guitar. Peter Townsend was playing backup guitar. Joe Walsh came up and sang a few songs. I mean, and the people in the room from Ringo and the All-Stars, these were all the guys I grew up listening to in my driveway while I was playing basketball, and it was just an amazing overall experience. And I got to meet Ringo Starr. And then a few weeks later, I met Paul McCartney at a Music Cares event. And Paul, he put his arm around me because I was talking to Richard Branson, who I invited as my guest. And I said, who are you, Paul McCartney? I mean, geez, you act like you guys are both knighted by the Queen. I'm not invisible. I'm a big plebe. And they got to get a kick out of it, and it was funny. It was a good moment. I think it could have lasted, except for security was like, oh, let me see where your table is, sir. And he thought it was a big deal. The downfall of that whole thing was my table was like 7 blocks away. But I got to meet Paul McCartney, and of course, sitting next to Richard Branson was his wife and Yoko Ono. Oh, wow. And so I'm like, I can't believe I wanted to meet all the living Beatles. And not only did I meet Ringo and Paul, but I got to meet Yoko, and George Harrison's wife was at Ringo's birthday.
Awesome. Amazing. And
Anyway, it's an awfully long story, but it's, you know.
Very interesting story. And I'd like to ask you to tell us another story, how you met Richard Branson, because you shared that story, which is quite funny as well.
Well, I always, on my bucket list was meet Richard Branson. And there was an event in San Francisco at a conference called the DMA. And I went the day before and I looked at how security was all dressed up.
Okay.
And so what I did was I went out to the Big and Tall store, because I'm a big guy, and I put on the same outfit that security had on the day before. And I'm a big guy, so nobody had any problems with it. And I just walked backstage after his event where he was meeting a few exclusive people, you know, people that probably paid $5,000 for a handshake and a picture. But I was security, so I just walked back. I had a $20 bill wrapped around my business card. And I walked up to him and said, "Hi, this is the first 20 we're going to make together." And he said, "Oh, brilliant, brilliant." I have a horrible London accent, but he goes, "Well, what do you have in mind?" And I'm like, damn. Well, I'll tell you what, he goes, "Here's my email address." And he gives me his private email address. And he goes, "Email me all your contact information and what you do." He goes, "And I'm happy to look at it. And if you have a way for us to do some business together, I'm always open." Richard Branson, the kindest person as far as an entrepreneur goes, one of the kindest people I've ever met. Down to earth, no ego. And here's a guy that, you know, signed the Rolling Stone. You know, this guy has been all over the world and done things that we could only imagine in our heads, you know, in addition to being knighted by the Queen. So down to earth guy. I saw him on Necker. My business grew and I got invited to Necker as part of an entrepreneurs group, and I met him and he remembered everything about it. And I said, "I was kind of surprised you put the $20 in your pocket." He goes, "Well, you don't get to be a billionaire without taking people's money." He goes, $20 is $20, which was a good lesson.
Awesome. Amazing. Now let's talk about branding. And a lot of people struggle with that as well, because, you know, sales obviously is very important, but if you don't have a good visibility in the marketplace, a good brand in the marketplace, sales becomes, just equally as hard, right, for people.
Yeah.
So what is your take on branding? How do you establish this kind of brand and sort of understand what people are looking for?
So there's a couple of things. There's the brand of your business, right? And ListenTrust, I have to make sure ListenTrust looks unique in the marketplace. It can't just be a call center. Because there's call centers all over the globe. Philippines is much cheaper than I am. The US is more expensive, but maybe they perform better. So how do I brand ListenTrust as a company you want to work with? We've done a lot of different things. We've focused a ton of time and energy on building a great culture. When you have a good culture and your turnover is lower, when people come to work with us, they have a team that usually stays with them. The turnover is very low because of the culture that we've built. In addition, because of my background and my sales training, all of our employees go through ListenTrust University, which is a sales training program, so they become an expert in how to communicate and basically network with the customer on the other end of the phone. On top of that, we built a program for our employees. My book's called Hired to Quit, and we train all of our employees to quit and go live their own dreams, because not many people wanted to be a call center agent. Maybe, but and so we train them on how to build their own life and how to accomplish their own big goals in life. And some people are meant to do bigger things. And I think every employer should take that view on their employees. They should treat them like they treat their children. You don't want to force your son to work for you if that's not what his passion is. And so I kind of think of all my employees as my kids. You know, I want them all to dream big and do their own thing. You know, whatever lights them up. And so by having that type of culture, we've kind of learned that most of our employees want a car, a house, and a vacation. And so we've worked with banks to help people get loans, you know, because we pay X, we've been in business a long time, banks trust us. So we put specific programs together to help our employees make their dreams come true. And when employees are making their dreams come true, they're really focused on providing good service for my customers. So as a result, we outperform US centers at a lower price all the time. So we've become unique in the market space. Now, if you're talking about branding a person, right, that requires work on Instagram and Facebook and on YouTube. And what type of persona are you trying to build? I've got a comedy persona, a music persona, an entrepreneurial persona, an author. You know, I've got all these different. I'm like Sybil on the internet. I've got more personalities than most people can count, and so it takes a lot of work to brand somebody online too. When I launched my book, I was trying to find a company that did it, and they didn't do a great job of providing a service. And the people that I did find that would do it, it was either 5 or 6 services tied together, or like if somebody did it all, I'm sure they were outsourcing some of it because it was no less than $15,000 a month.
I see.
And I'm like, who's got $15,000 a month to spend on branding? And so I hired some people in Mexico to do it for me. And over a year and a half, I realized it might be a business. And now we actually provide a branding service for people that's not overly expensive out of Mexico. And I think we do a great job of helping people with their personal brand. And so that's kind of one of the new businesses I've set up. But like I said, it takes a lot of work to build a great brand, and you got to differentiate yourself and stand out and provide ongoing content to make yourself interesting, and that's how you do it.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks a lot for going into the depth of that. And again, just learning more about you, how you work, and how you treat your employees. It's a lot of people, a lot of CEOs, they do say the things that you just said, but they don't actually implement it. But I've seen it how you actually implement it in your business. And you do that day after day, and constantly thinking about how you can take care of your people. And it's just amazing to see how that works and how it motivates people. Because I've talked to a few of your employees as well, and they are equally passionate about the business as you are. So that's amazing.
Yeah, it's building the right org chart. Even if you're a small business, you should have a good org chart, and making sure people kind of assigned to their roles and responsibilities. And then it's having a quad box, in order to make sure you're making the right decisions on what you do and what you don't do, even if your business is small, right? It's having a culture within your business, even if your business is small, it's having all those things in place. It's making sure there's a common goal, a common focus. If my team didn't have the same goal that I had, we'd be on 2 different ships going down different directions. So we've created a vision of what this business looks like, so everybody can see what it should be 3 years from now.
Awesome.
And that helps us get through all the little things. So there's a lot of things I've learned in having a business with 1,500 people. I've got 5 people that reported to me at one point. Each of them had 5 people that I related to sometimes. Each of them had people, big organization. And then one of the biggest things is learning how to create what I call committed action. And that's very important in any business, small or big as well, is learning that when you say you're going to do something, you have it done. And it's not just I'm going to do it by Wednesday. It's I'm going to do it by Wednesday at 5 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific, by end of day. It's communicating in detail so other people can frame and work their day. If I told you it was coming Wednesday at 7 a.m., you'd plan Wednesday as a day for you to be able to work on the same project that we're working on together. If I say Wednesday, you might not know. And let's say I told you it's going to come Wednesday and I send it at 7, but you didn't think it was coming until 5. And I'm like, well, we just lost a day. Why didn't you know? There's really significance in committed action and communication amongst the team. And I think I've done really well at learning how to be the best at communicating back and forth in a business, and making sure everybody's honoring their commitments in a time-sensitive way to others.
Amazing. And I know you are really big on culture, as you talked about. How do you notice other people paying too much attention to culture? Do they realize what kind of impact focusing on culture will have on their business? What is your take on, in general, about how much people pay attention to culture?
It's funny. I went to an event and I heard from Tony Hsieh, Richard Branson. I talked to a lot of people about culture. If people aren't paying enough attention to it, it has been said by many of the brightest entrepreneurs in the world, smarter than me, that culture is the #1 thing in your business. And I highly recommend working with your employees as if they're your own kids and finding ways to help them accomplish their own goals. And I also so one of the things that we're talking about now is one of the goals in my call center business that employees had was they want to go on a vacation.
Yeah.
Hard to do with as many people as I have, giving everybody a vacation every year. But I'm looking at how we can do 3 levels of vacation. One, that's kind of a lower vacation for a week. Maybe your house isn't on the beach, it's a block away. Yeah. And then in year 2, maybe your house is on the beach, but it's not as big. In year 3, you've got a house with a pool and a hot tub on the beach. Yeah. And it really, when I look at the cost to do that, it's really an act of finance. You have to be disciplined enough to take $20 a week for each employee and put it aside approximately. For a smaller company in the US, that should be easy to do. And the fact is, if you don't give people a vacation, they probably won't take one. Yeah. Because that's just the way the mentality is. They're probably going to spend the money. If you just give it to them as money, they're going to just spend it on things. And they're not going to ever have that time together as a family. Yeah. And so we found the 3 things people want to do is car, house, vacation. But what most people do is they'll get the car and they'll get the house and they'll never go on vacation. I think that might be the most important one of the 3. Yeah, creating memories together. Yeah. And so I think if you're an employer and you want to build a great culture, number 1, find out what people really want to do in their life outside of it. And maybe, look, there's a good portion that are going to be loving working for you. Those are the people that you want to keep. And then there's people that have their own dreams. My COO, my operations guy, wanted to own a golf course. Wow. And so he bought a golf course and quit. He's been so happy ever since. And we still do some business together. But I'm so proud of him for taking that risk and doing it because it's what his dream was.
That's great.
So hopefully I answered that question, but it's so important.
Yeah, very well. I mean, I completely agree, just connecting with people, understanding what they want. If we just focus on that, everything else becomes so much easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So about your music career, I just want to shift gears again because I know you're so passionate about it. So what are your plans now? What are you trying to do? Are we going to see you on big screen, big on some big labels?
Well, we'll see. So right now I am writing a lot of music and I'm working with other writers. And the one thing I'm mentioning is I'm like, okay, should I be singing love songs? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think I've got a good voice. Maybe it's not a great voice. Mm-hmm. I am actually very data driven. So I've been running media and I've been like, okay, how much does it cost for a stream? Well, when I have a friend of mine sing, she can get her streams down to under a penny. Oh, wow. Sorry, under 1/10 of a penny.
1/10, oh, okay.
Yeah, for me, I can get my streams down to 7/10 of a penny. Wow. And so when I start looking at the reality of what it costs, I look at what it costs for me to sing an EDM song, and then how much is the stream price. Well, when I sing an EDM song, which is weird, which includes some rap, because I don't look like a rapper, but people think I'm better at EDM and rap than I am at singing, and my cost per stream goes down. So right now I'm trying to be scientific and not emotional about where I go with music. If I write a good song, it doesn't have to be me that sings it and puts it out there, But that's what I'm talking to some young musicians about. I'm like, if you want to be successful with a label, use data in order to find your avatar of a customer, and then build out a case study as to where the cost per stream for someone to listen to your music is under a penny. Mm-hmm. And how far under a penny can you go? Because once you get to 1/10 of 1 cent, that's when somebody's going to sign you. Maybe they'll sign you at 2/10 of a penny, 3/10 of a penny. But if you can't figure out who your audience is and how to get your stream price down, nobody's going to sign you. Because when they do sign you, if they do a test on your record and it doesn't take off, well, the reality is they're going to put you on a shelf and you're not going to go anywhere. And so you might as well do the work yourself in order to find out how that works, to figure out where you should go and find out what you should be singing. I'd love to write all kinds of music and sing it, but I'm just, you got to look at the data, man. It's like, I'm old and overweight. I'm not going to play in the NBA, even though I love basketball. I can go play with my friends and do okay. Maybe I can coach basketball because I love it, or so it's just that process of trying to be real with where, of course I want to be a star, why not?
No, but even in this brief answer, you brought up a very good point. Like, a lot of people are passionate about things, but they get disillusioned by drinking their own Kool-Aid. So, but your approach is really really objective. Even though you're following your passion, you're being realistic. You're looking at the data. So which is another important lesson for people out there who are trying to do something extraordinary. So thanks a lot for sharing that.
Yeah.
And we are almost out of time now. And I know you have loads of experience, loads of wisdom. Do you have anything to share, a message that you want to share with your audience or our audience? Maybe people who are going through some tough times right now. What can they be doing right now to pull their lives together?
Well, I talk a lot about like through the COVID, and now you've got the Black Lives Matter stuff that is all a huge distraction.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it's not a necessary distraction, that because these are important things.
Yeah.
But it's distraction, and some businesses have done better,
mm-hmm.
and some haven't. Some have not, and the ones that have basically follow like one rule that I see often is the businesses that are successful are the ones that are reaching out to others and asking for help.
Yeah.
Right? They're asking other people for help. I've worked with, I don't own a restaurant, but I'm a marketer.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a lot of friends who do own restaurants and are expert marketers. And I just called some of my friends and said, what are people doing in the restaurant business to survive?
Yeah.
I got that information and shared it with a friend of mine who owns a bunch of restaurants. And what I saw, for example, in that business, every negative thing that happens in this world has an equal or greater positive impact, a positive influence. You just have to figure out what it is. For me, the cost of building a list went way down. And media has come to a point where you can basically geofence a business, meaning you can look at where the business is and put a fence around that business based on zip codes, and you can market just to those people.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the restaurant business, I advised a lot of my friends who own restaurants to build a list based on their geofence, offer specials every day. And then I used my marketing skills to create a script where we upsold the first responders or seniors, depending on what was nearby. If there was no hospital, we were going to send meals to seniors. Yeah. But we asked everybody who called in the restaurant business, hey, did you want to do an extra meal for a first responder?
Yeah.
And 40% of the people say, yeah, sure.
Oh, I see.
So now I'm building the ticket and I'm cooking more meals. And a lot of the restaurants I worked with built a list and was able to communicate through Facebook, through programmatic media, through different sources on how to communicate with people that are within their radius.
Mm-hmm.
And once the restaurants reopen, now they're going to have a better way to fill the restaurant. If they weren't at 100% occupancy every night, well, now they can be because they built that list during a time when things were down.
Yeah.
They spent just a little bit of money, and then they got their takeout business cooking. So now they've got not only the restaurant, but they can serve 1,000 people on takeout now if they've done it right, which they couldn't do before. So I think that owning a restaurant during the COVID, it could have been one of the biggest opportunities ever for people if they knew what to do, if they talked to others who were experts in marketing who could help them. And I see that in every business. In every business, there's opportunities. My friend owned a big travel business, and it was her that I spoke to about the idea of building. They owned all this vacation property that was empty. Mm-hmm. And they were in trouble. They had to fire almost all their staff, and they were down. And I said, why don't you bring some of your staff back and build out a plan and start using LinkedIn to contact CEOs about building a culture plan where you are the vacation solution. And for just $20 a week per employee as a deduction, they're going to get one of these 3 levels of trips. I said, you can build out an entire culture plan with your property, so that when the things do open up again, you now have 5 times the business.
Awesome. Well, there you go. You keep providing more value, and this this last 5 minutes could have been worth thousands of dollars for somebody.
I think there's a way to turn every negative into a positive. That's all. If you don't know the answer, then call someone like me. I've probably got 100 answers. And everybody, I think, has a friend like me. Somebody they're kind of embarrassed to call a friend. That's me. Who's a little bit crazy. Yeah, that's me. I might not seem that smart all the time because I'm kind of a goofball. Yep. That friend that you've got that's kind of a goofball but probably moderately successful might be the right guy to give you the answer.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, sharing all your wisdom with us, and just providing so much value and being the person you are. I really appreciate getting to know you and learning from you. Thank you so much.
No problem. I'm glad we did the call. I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. How do people reach out to you? How do they connect with you?
Pretty easy. I'm on Facebook.com/Craig Handley. I have a fan page that I reply to. I'm at Instagram.com/Craig Handley. Pretty easy for me to communicate there. I've got my email, Craig@ListenTrust. My phone number is published in my book, and you could probably Google Craig Handley and find my cell. I'm not shy about people wanting to find me because I'm a marketer and that's what I do.
Awesome.
So all somebody's going to do is Google Craig Handley and
Awesome.
they're going to find 5-6 ways to reach me.
Great. We will also put the links in the show notes so that it's easier.
Okay, perfect.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks.
I appreciate you, my friend.